Hi, welcome to DramaMeans. We're talking about the 2024 Chinese costume drama, Princess Royal. Today, drama means rebirth, drama means second chances, and drama means so much scheming that nothing makes sense anymore.
And first, a little bit of a summary. As the Emperor's politically powerful sister lays on her deathbed, she issues two final pieces of business. First, she orders the death of her scheming husband, who was seemingly responsible for poisoning her. Second, she silently wishes for another chance to go back and make things right. Moments later, she wakes up to find herself 20 years in the past, given a fresh start, but also with all the memories of her past life. However, she's not alone. Her husband has also made the journey, and the two embark to shape a brand new future. But will they make the same mistakes all over again? So I do think the beginning of this drama was, and not in a bad way, it was a little jarring at the beginning because it seemed like it just jumped right in, and everything was kind of like, there are people laying on their deathbed, and they're like, it's just so, there's just very little time at the beginning to catch your breath and wait, what's happening? It feels like it was like you're catching up midstream, and by design. But it was like, it took me the first 10 minutes of going like, wait, who's that? What's happening? What's going on?
The thing is, I really like that though, because sometimes a lot of shows, it takes a while to get started, and then it has to introduce all the characters, and you're just kind of sitting there like, okay, when are we going to get to the point? And lately, I feel like a lot of these dramas have started really getting right to the action, and maybe it's a little too much of a fast forward, and then they have to go back and explain or exposition or flashbacks, things like that, which aren't that great. But I do like the fact that things just kind of jump right into it. Same with the Double. That's how it started. It really started exciting, and this one, it also, you were invested right away.
I can't remember if this one started with the kind of exposition scroll, like the narrator being like, once upon a time there was a kingdom and a princess, and this, and then they were banished, and then the emperor decreed. I don't think that one started like this. Some of the other costume dramas we watch kind of like to give you all of the, because they're made up worlds, right? They're made up dynasties, and
Yeah.
they're not actually historical. They're just kind of, oh yeah, you have to kind of know what's going on in the court. But I don't think this one did it. It just kind of threw you in.
Yeah, I don't think this one did. It's, the thing is, because dramas like Blood of Youth and Lotus Casebook, there was such a backstory, and then you meet the character now, right? Present day, but then they had gone through a lot of shit, So then they had to kind of explain the world and the rules and what had happened before. But in this one, it threw you in where the emperor was on his deathbed and the princess is on her deathbed, and everyone's freaking on their deathbed.
Yeah, but I think they could have, if they wanted to, they could have started it with, in the age of whatever, the prince, the emperor was sick and his sister is on her death, and the rivalry between the husband and wife, and the court is in chaos, or that kind of thing, and set the table. But I kind of like that they felt enough trust in the audience to not need to do that, where they're like, no, we're going to throw you in, we're going to dump you in the middle, you're going to understand the dynamics between the characters after the 2 or 3 scenes you're going to see, and then we're just going to fill in all the details and backstory as we go.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. I do like that it just started with it's pulling you in right away, and you're not sitting there just waiting for something to happen, whereas a lot of dramas in the past have done it that way.
Well, even the reveal that they're husband and wife, where the emperor's like, my sister has all the power, are you really willing to go against your wife? And you're like, oh, he's warning him about his wife being powerful. They have a bad relationship. That's his sister. Just, I like the way they kind of introduced the relationship.
I actually didn't realize that it was going to be a rebirth story, because I didn't really watch too much of like the trailers, or like, I didn't read the synopsis before we started this. And so when it was a rebirth, I'm like, oh, are we gonna watch another like one of these rebirths? And I was so glad that the double wasn't a rebirth, and it was just like, she survived her attempted murder.
Right.
Right? But like, I like the fact that like, okay, it was a rebirth, but then I also liked that her husband, Pei Wen-shin, is also back.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a twist on it. They took that kind of, oh, I'm back to redo this everything, except for the person that you ordered the death of, 10 minutes of screen time ago is also back.
Yeah.
And I like that they have to navigate that against each other and together throughout the whole show. You know what else I really like about this version of Rebirth? At the end, spoiler alert, really early on, it's not all a dream.
Yeah. And I was a little worried because in the beginning she does like, oh, I wish, I have a good dream and I can like relive this or whatever, right? And you're like, fuck, is it gonna all be a dream again?
I mean, maybe it was. Maybe it is just all a dream, but they didn't like give that to us as at the very end of, oh, by the way, it was all a dream. Like, if it is all a dream, you just lived the dream now, and you didn't have to like give us that ending that makes me want to gouge my eyes out.
Yeah. So, but I also really like how they both find out that they both have returned really early on, and how they found out.
Mm-hmm.
And it really gives you like a kind of window in how well they know each other, and like the little like scenes throughout like, the 20 years that they had been together, and how they played chess or go or whatever, whatever you want to call it, with each other all these years. So they know how each other thinks. They know how, they strategize. They know how they play. And it's just like they both at the same time was like, they're back with me. Like,
well, it's they not only knew each other, but they knew the maturity they'd gone through, because he's sort of like, that's not how she should be playing chess as a 20-year-old. That's how she was playing chess with me 10, 12 years later. So, like, she had matured. And she was saying the same thing about him. Like, no, that's not him 20 years ago. That's him 10 minutes ago. And so they both recognized the growth they had throughout their time together previously, and how much they changed over the course of 20 years. So like they knew the second that they started playing that game and looking at each other going, I am looking at the person from my past, not necessarily the 20-year-old version, the back in time. Like we both have all of our memories and we know what's going on.
Yeah. So it just kind of gives you like a little peek in their lives and their relationship, and and of course they don't show you how it all turns sour right away, but then you're just kind of like, oh yeah, like they have such a strong understanding for each other, and like, you just immediately have that like connection.
I really enjoy that it wasn't like, it felt like a bad way to do it would have been, and they kind of did this later in the show when the third person is back, from the future, but it wasn't a line. Like, I'm really glad it wasn't like one of them said something. It's like, wait a minute, how would have you known that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it was like a quip that they said that they like caught onto. It had to be this personal thing that was very specific to their relationship, and it was all done through action and scene work rather than just someone catching each other reciting a poem. And like, wait a minute, how do you know that poem? That poem wouldn't have been written yet.
But I like that that's exactly what they did in terms of like, oh, with them, it's an action thing. It's a moment thing. They realize that, the other person is back, right? But with the other guy, Surong Ching, like, because his character, she always thought she knew him, right? But there was so much that she didn't know. And that's why it had to be a poem that he recited, or it was like a line that he used to say. Like, it had to be something very surface like that.
Very like factual. Like it was information that you'd only know because I told you that last time. Like how would you have known that? Like it was very factual and not emotional.
Yes. And so that it was a really good distinction between the two.
Absolutely. Because I think what you said right there was kind of hits the nail on the head. She comes back in time going, oh, I missed my chance with my soulmate. I need to be with my soulmate this time. But realistically, he was never her soulmate. It was just, he was kind of this like comforting shoulder because her relationship with the husband soured so badly. And he was there to kind of lean on. But it wasn't her soulmate. It wasn't who she was meant to be with and even knew very well.
Yeah. So I like that as things kind of develop and like, you know, it's all about second chances, right? And so they're like, although people always like fall back into like what their habits are or what they're used to and their personality, right? So a lot of things you would think, oh, history's just going to repeat itself, right? But I really like that it was such a like visible effort that they had to put in to be like, okay, I'm not going to let this repeat. I have to change things. And it shows with him always like he wants to just let it be whenever they have a fight, whenever there's something that kind of goes on, and then he has to rethink and really struggle mentally and like, you know what, I can't just let it go again this time around. And then he has to confront her. Although I do think they let it drag out a little too long before like the actual like confrontation or like, you know, where he just speaks his mind of the things that he had been thinking about.
Right.
But I do like those moments where he's just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm thinking. And like calls her out on her bullshit.
Yeah. And he does it pretty early on. And then throughout, I do think once in a while, I did find myself going like, all right, get to it already. Like,
Yes.
stop holding on to it. Because once you learn that lesson, you have to keep applying that lesson. You can't learn that lesson once and then hold dumb secrets and then hold things close to your vest. Like, no, you learned the lesson, you've matured, you know, that's stupid, so stop doing it, dude.
Yeah. And it's really frustrating during those points where it's like, come on, just fucking say it, you know? And then it's like, I know you have that like struggle or that inner struggle of like, should I say what I want to say? It's like, you've seen how it's worked with before and you guys have gotten better. Like, it's clear that you need to like literally tell her what she's doing wrong, you know, because she's not gonna freaking get it. And for her to like also be like, let's communicate here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they tried to draw out how much she didn't trust him, obviously, because, you know, from her perspective, the first time around, she kind of fell for him, trusted him, and then realized, oh, he doesn't really love me the way I thought he loved me. Here I've put my trust and my love into someone, and they weren't who I thought they were. And then the relationship went sideways. And so she's very apprehensive of like diving back in. But it does feel like, again, there's a few times in the show where she overcomes that and she dives in anyway, but then she still has that problem of, oh, I don't want to dive in and give him my heart. And it's like, well, you kind of already did. We kind of already learned this lesson in episode 12. So if we're in episode 20, you kind of just have to just sack up and trust him now because we've come this far.
Yeah, totally. And I do like those moments where he has to like spell it out for her because clearly she's just, I don't know if it's like thinks too highly of herself or what it is, but it's just like how he's like, you never even considered that I might actually want to spend time with you. You never even like considered that I might be true and sincere to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she really had to step back and like, oh, you're right. I am totally, you know, dismissing your feelings and dismissing you as a person.
Well, she's so tactical, and it's because of the life she'd lived. Like, she's carrying her baggage with her, and she's so tactical and she's so scheming. She's always thinking 3 steps ahead, that nothing anybody does can have a meaning on the surface. Everything has to have 3 meanings. And so, like, he's planting flowers in a field, and that's like a tactical distraction for the bad guys to lure them into her trap. And oh my gosh, it's so cool that he knows what I'm thinking. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Maybe he's just planting flowers because you like flowers. And that never occurred to her.
Yeah.
And so you can see both sides, because weirdly, he gets over her ordering his death pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Where
Like,
she holds on to her gripes a little longer.
yeah, he gets over it, but I feel like it's because he was expecting it the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, she ordered his death because she mistakenly thought that he tried to kill her.
Yeah.
And so it was this miscommunication. It was part of that. Hey, if we would have just communicated, if we would have been on the same page, that wouldn't have happened anyway. So he's not really, he is treating this as a fresh start in a lot of ways, more than she really is. She's kind of treating this as a continuation of their previous life and going like, okay, well, now I know what I know, so I can use this to manipulate, and I can use this to like angle. And he's like, why don't we just start over and see if we can like rekindle this and get back something that we had?
Yeah. But also like understanding himself more after the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like for her, she still had to learn about herself through him.
Well, I think that goes back to just like her journey being, one of not only going back to change the past, but self-discovery and learning that, oh, the guy I thought was everything to me isn't really. I didn't really know him that well. And the person who's always been by my side or tried to be by my side, even when I wouldn't let them, here they are in this new chance, like proving themselves yet again and again and again. And so she had to really figure out what she wanted to do and what she wanted to accomplish throughout the whole show, other than just changing the past.
So I really like their little cute flirty moments. He's very much vocal about his feelings towards her this time around. Sometimes to the point where he gets like a little too immature, and I'm like, he has lived, the 20 years, like he has all the memories. Like it almost feels like he's a little too naive and a little too immature. And I understand, like, oh yeah, he's starting new, and then he's like having all these like feelings.
Stupid feelings.
But like, I wish his character was a little bit more consistent. I feel like his character was kind of going back and forth to, service the plot and like the situation rather than like his actual personality.
Yeah, he would get like weirdly jealous in places where I kind of felt, you should know this is a play. Like, you should know that this is either her being the scheming or, I don't know. There was just a couple times there where I'm like, dude, you could be fake jealous here, but I don't understand actual jealousy. Like when she goes to the boat and she brings like the guys onto the boat, and she's just trying to like basically be like, I'm going to divorce you and go be a playboy herself. And I'm like, dude, that she's not really like that. Like, why she's doing this. It's all tactical. So why you're actually like mad at the guy who's like trying to court her, like, he's a buffoon.
Yeah, like it just doesn't seem like him, and he's there's times when I'm like, oh, he should understand where she's coming from, and he kind of like gets blinded by jealousy. And it's just the jealousy is like, I understand being super jealous and like hesitant towards Su Rongqing because like
Their history.
Yeah, their history.
I was going to say the same thing. There, with that character, I get it.
Yeah. But with Wang Bowen's character, I don't remember his character's name. Like that makes no sense.
Yeah. And also he's just kind of like some low-level doof. Like, and the guy's in like the background of so many scenes
Oh my God.
before he even gets a line of dialogue.
So like I'm a huge fan of his. I prefer his singing over his acting's good too. Like he was in one of the first dramas that I watched her in, and he was like, I don't know, you could call him a second male lead or you can call him a third male lead, whatever, but he was also like the comic relief in it. But like I don't know if maybe people haven't seen him like in the early days of BL, but he was in one of the early Chinese BLs, right? He was the lead in it. And it was so nice to see him still working because for a while, like he kind of got that popularity. Then he was concentrating on music. And then and then he was like doing some dramas and stuff. He was like a lead in like, you know, a rom-com type drama a couple years back. And then he kind of disappeared. And I was like, where is he? What's he up to? He doesn't update his IG anymore, kind of thing, right? And then I see him in this and I'm like so excited. But then he was like, I thought he was just background.
Yeah, he kind of was for the first almost half of the show.
3/4 of the show.
He only started to actually be a character with that boat scene. And then he's kind of like, he had lines and he was like, oh, but then they kind of used him and he was able to like be one of their minions.
Yeah, so it's good to see him, you know, have a character and he's still acting, and I would like to see him in more things.
But back to our main couple, because he was not a viable love interest, which is why I don't think that Homeboy should have been jealous about him.
Yeah.
I do think their dynamic when they're alone is the best.
It's the best. Like, honestly, like through the whole drama, it's them together. And I'm not saying they have like amazing chemistry and like, you know, super lovey-dovey where I'm like shipping them outside of the show or anything. But them, you know, working together and plotting, you know, to take other people down and all the stuff, and just like knowing what the other person is like gonna, like the next step they're gonna take is the best to watch.
Well, I think they knew how to push each other's buttons. So they knew how to do it like real, like in front of everyone. They knew how to do it like within the court and within the family dynamic. But then they also knew how to do it behind closed doors. Like, I know when you're not telling me what you're really feeling because I know how to push your buttons. Oh, you don't want me to be here? I'll leave. No, don't leave. Like, they knew how to do that to each other. And so they're not only pulling the strings of the people in the court, they knew how to pull each other's strings, which was so consistent to the entire show, because this entire show is about scheming.
Yeah.
This entire show is about the math of the chess of the court. And the fact that that extended into their personal relationship, I thought was really well done.
Yeah. And I even even in the end where like she's like, oh, I have to go meet with Su Rongqing. I need to talk to him. And he's like, he doesn't say it out loud where like, don't go meet him, blah, and then like fly off the handles, which I hate. He literally is like, you need to stay home today. You just need to stay home. And then when she like tries to sneak out and he shows back up after he says he's leaving or whatever, he's like, you're staying home.
Well, because he knew.
Yeah. And it's just like, I knew what you're going to do. I'm not going to let you do it. And, you know, I know your moves.
And I think that was the other thing is, you know, outside the relationship, when it came to the plotting and the making their moves within the palace, they didn't have to always talk to each other to know what the other was doing. And so a lot of time it was, you know, she's the left hand and he's the right hand, or vice versa, whatever hand you want them to be. And they each knew, based on the moves they were making, why they were making those moves. So they didn't have to be like, oh no, why is she doing this? And then one runs in and bumbles up the whole thing. Like it was, wait, if she's doing this, she must have a good reason, which means that so and so is doing this. And then I can do this to support her mission.
Yeah.
And they can just be two hands, wielding double swords without having to just keep checking in with each other.
Yeah. It's so satisfying to watch. And I'm such a sucker for like that ultimate, like, I know what you need me to do, so I'm just going to do it.
Yes. Yes. Because it's that trust. And then we talked about it last week on, just like the trust of characters, of like building that together and communicating, but also just knowing without having to ask where you need me to be. I think that was Blood of Youth also, where they're kind of spread out all over the map, and each of them has to do their own job and depend like, if I do my job, you'll do your job, and I don't have to check in and make sure. Like, I'm just committed to this, and I know that you'll do your thing and I'll do mine. And I think there was a lot of that in this show. There was a lot of stuff that was not so good in the trust department, but in that they did a really good job.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really nice to see. I also really like how when she's in court and, all the other court officials are like badgering her and like putting her down and like, saying she's doing this or that. And she like doesn't really bat an eyelash, and she could just like stand up to these people. And when she busts in and saves him from like, being beaten to death by his family and stuff.
Yeah.
And like how she just commands the room and everyone's got to listen to her. I know she's a freaking princess, so everyone does have to listen to her, but like also just the way she like controls it. And then like I feel like her strongest point is like being able to talk her way out of everything.
Well, but they even show the difference between like her as a princess and then dumb shit princess, the Consort Rose like daughter. How like she tries to like get him, and like she tries it, but she has no confidence in herself. She has no ability to command the authority. So it's not just, oh, she's a princess, we'll listen to her. She comes in and she's like, I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you, I'm more powerful than you, and you have to listen to me now.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
She swings a big dick. She's got that big dick energy.
Anyway, so that's so satisfying to watch. And I'm actually really pleased with both the double and the Princess Royal, because they're both like scheming characters, right? And just like strong women, and they will do what they need to and like, just command it. I love it.
I think my favorite part of her character is she's fairly complex, is that she's scheming and she's smart, but then she makes mistakes and she's vulnerable and she's a little emotionally idiotic at times. And then other times she's emotionally mature. Like, she's complex. She doesn't feel just like I think a lot of times, and this isn't just with strong women characters, strong male characters, that we just get so obsessed with our characters not being able to make a mistake, not being able to be vulnerable. Everyone has to be just so smart all the time. And I do think they did a really good job of giving her shades of gray and giving her mistakes to make. And she doesn't always have the right things to say. And she gets outmaneuvered a couple times. And I really enjoyed the fact that you knew that everything wasn't going to go perfect. And she wasn't going to make every right call. But then when the rubber met the road, it was time to get really, get in there and get it done. She did. So can we talk about the rarity of the ending? Because I said with 100% certainty, probably in episode 3, well, this is one where they all die at the end.
You did say that.
I said that so quick. They're going to die at the end. And I'll tell you why I said it. And this is part of what I like about the show, and we haven't really talked about it yet, is that I really liked how the good guys in our show didn't play by the rules. they cheated, they lied, they manipulated just as much as the bad guys did, because that's how you beat bad guys, is you gotta cheat as much as they're willing to cheat. And I'm like, man, that's not a very good like moral lesson of like, you gotta play dirty to beat dirty folks. So I'm like, yeah, everyone's gonna have to die in this one, because they're all kind of make some reprehensible calls. But I kind of enjoyed the fact that they didn't have to like find the evidence to take down the bad guy. They're like, no, we just have to manipulate the truth to take down the bad guy and back them into a corner where that like one of my favorite moments is when he proves that the assassin is the guy's son, like his illegitimate son. And she's like, how did you know the blood was going to mix? And he's like, yeah, that whole thing's bullshit. The blood always mixes. And you're like, you fucking cheater.
But it's so funny because they use it again later.
Yeah, it was used at the very, very end again.
Yeah. And it's like, we all know. We all knew, like everyone was like tense and stuff, but we all knew that it was going to mix from the previous conversation. So it was interesting.
But I like the fact that, so I had said at the beginning, this is one where they all die at the end. And I think I've said it on the podcast many times. I'm a little over that. I'm a little over the tragic love story. Like as soon as our characters get together, then they all have to die in some sort of noble pursuit that's for the greater good. Spare me.
The thing is, there wasn't much of really a noble pursuit per se.
Yeah, maybe not.
That's why.
Well, I'm glad they didn't all die at the end. If you're wondering.
Thank goodness it was a happy ending. Like I am also so sick of it. After Journey to Love, I was like, I'm fucking done with this like everyone dies bullshit.
It's just, and especially when it's unnecessary. Like you're just killing off characters in the last 2 episodes because you feel like you need to, for some either moral balance or whatever it is. Like this one, they just felt like the characters that needed to get their comeuppance, they come up in them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, morals is kind of a suggestion in this one.
For sure. And I kind of like that. I like that they colored outside the lines and it was all gray. And it was like all's fair in court battles. Like literally, there's no real rules. There's nothing. I mean, he kidnaps everyone's families at the end to make sure that she's alive, that she can stay alive. And so like they do some dirty, underhanded things to win the game, but it's kind of like that's the game you play to survive. Otherwise, you end up like we did last time.
Yeah.
And it might have even been what they learned from last time of like, oh yeah, we played the game well, but we just didn't play it dirty enough and we lost and we got manipulated. And
well, the main thing of why they failed the first time was they didn't stay together.
Well, they didn't communicate.
Yeah.
It was all perceptions and guessing and, you know, letting people speak in your ears and assumptions, all that stuff. And this time they kind of avoided that. But it was nice to see an actual happy ending.
Yeah. So, it's not all roses in this drama.
Sunshine and cupcakes.
Anyway, so what we're saying is there are a lot of stuff we didn't like about it.
And I think for me, most of it was negative through cumulative events where the first half of the show, I was kind of forgiving a lot of the stuff I didn't like about it because it felt like it was propulsive and it felt like the show was working and I liked the dynamic. But the longer they kept doing the things that annoyed me, the show to me got worse and worse. And so like by the time you get into the last run of episodes, I was already started feeling like we were trending downward in the show. And then we kind of hit some real dumb stuff near the end.
Yeah, definitely.
And I was like, oh, I think the wheels are coming off this one.
Yeah, and again, we said before, like, when she learns her lesson, or when they both learn their lesson, and they're like, we need to communicate, and then the next time around, it's like, we're not going to communicate, we're going to hide all this shit from each other, and it's like, wait, I thought you freaking learned your lesson, like, I thought you you guys even said to each other, like, let's talk things out and communicate. And then the next thing is, oh, I can't tell them.
Yeah, it's weird because there's this thing in drama about resolving the thing between you. Like, what is the main block between main characters, whether they're lovers, partners, friends, rivals, whatever. Once you kind of overcome that block, you're not really able to go back to it again. And I felt like they just kept trying to go back to this trust block. Like, oh, I trust you, but I can't give you my heart. It's like, well, that's kind of the same thing. Oh, I gave you my heart, but then I don't want to trust you. You're like, well, no, but we've been here already. And I think they needed to find an evolution of their not communicating rather than it just be, I got to keep this to myself for an episode. Because why?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's more like they didn't have enough obstacles for the two of them relationship wise, so they had to repeat it over and over again.
Yeah, it was just kind of their structure of like every 3 or 4 episodes, one of them would learn something, and then they would kind of hold it to themselves, and then they would have to self-reflect on it a bunch. And then meanwhile, everything's happening. There's so much scheming going on. You're like, hey, with how fast the scheming of the show is going, you probably should talk to each other, you dummies. And then it just made them feel dumb.
Yeah. Because they had a lot of like court stuff and battles and whatever, but their relationship all like boiled down to miscommunication and jealousy.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so it was too simple, and so they didn't have enough substance to keep creating waves between them.
I mean, I think this one suffers from what a lot of these costume dramas suffer from. It's just 40 episodes is too many.
It really is. Like, I feel like they really could have gone through and like cut 10 episodes out of this.
I feel that way almost about every single one of these costume dramas. It just feels like 40 is because you want these relationships. Like, part of the thing we want to see is the cute chemistry, is the romance between the main characters. We don't want to have an entire show where we never get to see that till the end.
Yeah.
So like, we want to see them together, but at a certain point, like you say, once they get together, then you kind of lose the tension. Everyone always says it's fun to watch characters fall in love. It's not really fun to watch them be in love. Like, after a while, there's just no more conflict. So why are we watching it for 40 episodes when you're like, there's nothing left to like drain out of this lemon? It is squeezed dry by episode 30. And it really felt like it in this one. Like, it really felt like it.
Yeah. So those were issues. And then I started getting really like, I don't know if any of this really makes sense anymore. It's like, I know they're gonna do this, so we're gonna do that, but then they're gonna know that we're gonna do this, so we're actually gonna really do this. It's like so much scheming, and it's so convoluted, and I'm like, I'm not really sure all of this works. Like, we have to just give you like, oh yeah, the benefit of the doubt that it's gonna work out because you say it is. But I'm like, all this stuff, I don't know.
It reminded me of that scene, the tea scene in The Princess Bride, where he poisons the cups and he's like, you know that I know that you would never put the tea in front of me, so the poison must be in front of you, but you would know that, so that the tea has to be in front of me, but then you know that I would know that you knew. I was like, okay, just enact the plan, and if it works, I'll believe you. Because I don't really follow. I was getting very lost in the scheming.
Yeah.
And especially when you're watching this through subtitle, I'm like, I don't know if I'm even getting all the scheming through the subtitle and the subtlety of the scheming.
Yeah.
And at a point, I'm like, I think you just said it. I was like, I'll just trust you, bro. I'll just trust you that that's supposed to work.
Yeah. Especially like towards the end, and I'm just like, this doesn't make sense anymore. Yeah, especially when you have like the dumbest king ever, where he claims that he knows everything. And, he suspects everyone.
Well, he says flat out, I know everyone's playing games.
Yeah.
I know everyone that comes in here and has a story to tell. is playing an angle. So, like, on one hand, he seems smart for that, but then he continuously seems to believe all of their angles.
I know, and it's just so ridiculous. Like literally, Concert Row is like, oh, she did this and this and this, and then the princess is like, oh, well, you framed me for this and this and this, and she's like, I had to frame you or whatever, right? And then this next thing, but it's because of this and this and this, and then the king is like, oh yeah, really? I believe you. I'm like, fuck you, motherfucker! Like, come on.
Yeah, he's not the best.
He's terrible. Like, I've never seen such a fucking, like, there were kings in other dramas where they're not even thinking, like they're not even trying, right? And they're like, all they do is like,
get led around by the nose.
Yeah, or they're like just concerned about women more than any, court stuff, and they're just like completely incompetent. But like they're trying to draw this king as like this really suspicious guy that doesn't trust anybody, like he knows what's all the inner workings of his palace and all that bullshit, and he's literally like letting everyone manipulate him.
Well, the things I didn't understand a lot of times were like, he would say to his little eunuch guy, he'd be like, oh, I know what's going on here behind the scenes, right? And then someone walks in and it's like, yeah, but did you know that the other princess was talking shit about me? Which, like, he just said, my daughter's a game player. And then she comes in and is like, oh, Concert Row's daughter was talking shit about me. And he's like, how dare her? It's like, well, okay. like, well, what? He's just so easily, like, flies off the handle, like, gets so upset. And then where they really lost me was in the kind of, he's sitting there at the winter festival and he's literally tells his eunuch, get my popcorn ready because I'm about to watch all of these youngsters do battle. But really, he's trying to kill everybody. He tries to kill the princess. He tries to kill the prince. He tries to kill his other son. He tries to kill the crown. I lost track of who was trying to kill who, and I'm like, is he just trying to kill everybody?
But like, okay, so he's trying to kill everybody, right? But like, what is the ultimate goal? He knows he's dying because literally, Consort Row is like literally saying, hey, I poisoned you all this fucking time and now you're gonna die, right? And then she gets put in jail, which at that point he should have just given her some poison wine because this bitch just tried to poison the fucking king, right? But he doesn't do that. She goes to jail, and then the next thing is like, let her back out and have all the fucking power ever.
But also, let her out because her son has been poisoned, and he's pretending to care that his son has been poisoned, so he lets out her because it's like, you need to save your son and be by his side, but I poisoned him. We're like, wait, why? Like, why don't you just let the kid die and be done with it?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, no, bring his mother here. It's so sad. It's like, bitch is in jail. She doesn't get to just come out for vacation because her kid's dead. Like, none of this makes any sense now.
It doesn't make sense because, like, okay, if, say, both sons die and the princess dies, like, and you die, like, what do you have left?
He has to give the kingdom to the very people he's been fighting against the whole time, which are the noble families.
Exactly. It's
so
like,
it just, it gets so, and I just lost track at that point because I'm like, well, who's trying to kill who, and who's succeeding, and whose guys in black pajamas are those? Because those guys in black pajamas work for this guy, but then they really work for this guy. Huh?
It made no sense, and it was just so ridiculous. And literally, like, Li Rong, the princess, basically is like, hey, How are you so stupid that you can't see that your crown prince, your son, wants exactly what you want?
Yeah. See, they did a really bad job of, and I kept saying this during the show, of demonstrating why the crown prince was such a bad choice and why, like, the emperor has no, he doesn't want to train the kid, he doesn't want to teach him, he doesn't want to take him under his wing to, like, shape him. He's just like, he's a loser. I'm like, but he hasn't done anything losery.
Yeah.
Like, the kid has done nothing losery. He's not, like, in gambling halls with prostitutes like we see sometimes with the spoiled crown prince. He isn't, like, murdering and scheming people. He's literally, like, in court trying to do a good job. Maybe his temperament's not that great, but he went off to war for you. Like, what has this kid done that's so bad other than he belongs to the wrong family?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then that's your bad because you married the lady in the wrong family.
Yeah. So it's just but then like at the end he's like, I'm gonna give you a choice. Right? You have to betray your whole family. And it's like, but like, you really want someone that would betray their whole fucking family? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that's
made no
the kind
sense.
of king you want? Like, I mean, that's what you would do. But even you didn't fucking, like, kill everybody. Otherwise, you would have already. You would have already been a tyrant, right? But, like, and now, like, that's what you're asking is, like, your son to literally betray and massacre his whole family. And then when he says no, you're mad. I'm like, that's an upstanding guy. He doesn't want to go around murdering people.
I mean, the biggest problem, and this is a little bit of a lesson about character building, they would have been better off making this king a complete dumbass the whole time. Made him just be a stupid idiot that got led around by the nose, rather than trying to make him seem smart, but then he's really stupid. Because it's insulting to the audience that you're telling the audience in two breaths. You're telling us, here's the really smart king because he says things behind closed doors to his eunuch that, like, hey, I know what's going on around here. But then his actions make him seem stupid. It's almost worse than just him being stupid.
Yeah. Or, as you said before, you make the crown prince have those like weird moments. Like, he's good, he's great, and then all of a sudden he goes and flies off the handle. Or, like, he makes a terrible choice, and just something that shows why you hate him so much and why he would be a bad king. Because I mean, like what we saw, in the flashbacks and how Surong Ching like explains it all. Yeah, sure, he's like, he ruins the country or whatever, but like that's what the whole second chance is for. You shape him so he doesn't ruin the whole fucking country. Like that is the fucking point of second chances.
Yeah. It felt like they needed to show us more in the present of this guy's ability to become a monster.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look, the monster is buried deep within him. We can't trust him. And then you give his sister a little bit of a, like, oh, you're right. I've seen the monster and I don't like that part of my brother. But we never see that in the present. He's so even tempered. He's so just normal that everyone's concerns about him, including the king and Rongqing, like everyone's concerns about him becoming this tyrant, just feel kind of dumb because they're like, well, yeah, in the last version, after his wife died or after his concubine that he loved so much died, and like his world was destroyed, yeah, he became a shithead. And also, he didn't have the benefit of having someone by his side that had 20 years of extra experience.
Yeah. And like it was funny because in the end, Surong Ching's like telling the story, right? And one of my favorite things was like his brother is like, after hearing his whole story and how he himself died a horrible death, was like, just face it, the noble families are like a tumor to the country, and then also like you literally explain that you tried to, the Su family tried to murder his son, and then actually murdered his beloved wife.
And then, oh no, he became a tyrant, and that was all his fault.
Yeah. And I'm like, hello, bitch. You fucking did this. You guys fucking did this.
When he was going through that flashback, I kept going, well, duh, he tried to kill you. You're bad. Your family sucks. Like, he killed them for a different reason, but he wasn't wrong to kill them. They're horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you're the asshole here. Am I the asshole? Yes, you are the asshole, dude.
And also, he found out that his son is not his son.
Right.
Like,
well, it goes to one of your other points where with Rongqing, who's just over the top. Like I didn't understand where all the villainy was coming from, because I felt like this character should have existed in this gray area where he's haunted by this death of his family and he can't get over it. And so he's taking precautions. But the way he started crossing lines in such a cartoonish bad guy way, I was like, burn down the library, which also was a scheme to me that made no sense. Burn down the Imperial Library and leave the servant inside of it so he could die with it. Like, what?
yeah, it's just like, it just became such an over-the-top, like, caricature of a villain, you know? And it's just like, he doesn't actually have a justifiable motivation.
No, he's protecting the family that died last time. And he feels that the prince is to blame for everything.
But, like, literally, in order to protect his family, he's planning a coup that could kill his family. So it's like, I need to save my family by killing my family.
Well, he also poisons his dad to save his
Yes,
family.
exactly. So, like, it's just like, there's no logic in it whatsoever. And you can say, like, oh, he's just lost his mind, but, like, it should actually, like, his reasoning should actually make sense.
That's the thing when it comes to a show that is trying to demonstrate, like, the battle of wits. You can't have characters who are currently engaged in a battle of wits also be dumb as dog shit. Like, he's engaged with our main characters in outmaneuvering them. And let's just say all of the maneuvering works, even though I still doubt it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, sure. I believe you. But you're telling me, look at how smart this guy is. But then he can't understand just basic, like, hi. You tried to kill this dude's son in the past. You planted this other woman is in the palace that he doesn't love, bearing a child that's not his. Like, you don't take any of these circumstances into account when you blame the prince for the shitty direction the country went. Like, you don't take any responsibility for that, Mr. Battle of Wits guy.
Yeah. And I just have to say that the last 7 episodes were pretty unbearable to watch.
It got real bad real fast.
Yeah. And you know how, like, Ryan has a thing where he's like, once he just really hates a character, it's like, cut their heads off, is what he says, right? For me, it's always fast forward.
Yeah, let's fast forward the scene. Just fast forward the scene. Let's get to the point already.
Yeah. And it was so hard for me not to just reach for the remote and just, like, fast forward all the bullshit that was happening, especially the last 7 episodes. It was just like, I could barely tolerate it.
Yeah, I really did think the first half of this show felt strong. And then little by little, there started to be cracks that kind of showed. And I was like, I don't know about whether the scheming works. Some of these characters are a little too annoying. There's too many annoying characters. There's too many parents that are dumb and, snivelly people. And then it just kind of fell off a cliff. And I was like, what are we watching? And it really felt like they were just, like, leaning on ideas we've seen before, because, like, what else are we going to do? It's episode 36, a flashback episode. where he tells them the entire backstory. He tells his brother, "Oh, by the way, I can see the future." Like Rongqing's like, "By the way, I've seen the entire future in a dream, and our family's doomed. That's why I'm doing all this crazy shit."
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do we need all of this? Do we need every bit of this? I don't think so.
Yeah. So even with that whole flashback thing, where it's the love story between Shangguan Ya and Su Ronghua, it was such a like filler episode because it's like we kind of saw the flashback of them before, and we understood where it obviously didn't lead to where we wanted it to be, right? We didn't need all of that. Like, it was such a waste of time. It was just because they couldn't fill the 40 episodes.
Well, they also had to like have this lame, like, who killed the princess, like who really poisoned me, and then they had to somehow kind of like retcon this three-way, like, oh, it was me and your brother and your little friend, like we all conspired, like none of us were trustworthy.
Yeah.
Which, like, I get it. I get like the rich irony of the only person that she could trust in her last life was her husband, and that is the person she ordered the death of and suspected of killing her.
Yeah.
And it was basically everyone else around her that she cared about. I get the irony, but I don't need all this in-depth flashback and storytelling. And like at one point, Pei Wen-shen is like telling her stuff she should know.
Yeah.
like they're doing this like dual flashback between Rongqing and him, and I'm like, but shouldn't the princess know a lot of this stuff?
Yeah, like maybe she didn't know all the inner workings and like the schemes that were going on, but like she should have known like the main things that did happen.
Like the history of the country, like, and by the way, we declared war on the North. You're like, yeah, she should have known that part. Kind of would have been in the news. The morning paper she would get.
Yeah. So there was just all kinds of bad shit.
And speaking of dumb characters, I do think if this was up for an award, this drama, it would be Worst Mother's Award. Because both the queen, the emperor's wife, the lead character's mother, and Consort Ro are the worst humans, are the most useless characters, and they needed to be beheaded very quickly.
So here's the thing. At least the queen, we didn't have to see that much.
She was not in very much of it.
Yeah, so that, thankfully, we didn't have to, like, sit through a bunch of her scenes and, like, her whimpering about how the king doesn't love her, you know, kind of thing, right?
Can I tell you one of my favorite scenes in the entire show? And it happened very early on, is when the queen is kind of like, oh, this is what we need to do, and this is how we will strengthen our family. And the lead just looks at her and is like, Mom, you're not cut out for this. You're not very good at this. You're not very smart. How about you sit down, shut the fuck up, and let me do my thing? I was like, I love this. Like, she's literally telling her mom, like, you don't know how to play this game. You will never be good at this game. Sit down and let the adults handle this. If she would have sat down and let the adults handle this, I wouldn't have a problem with this character. But she kept poking her head into things and saying stupid things and opening her dumb mouth.
Yeah. But with, at least also, like, with Consort Ro, like, when her son dies and how fast she bounces back and just accepts the, like, substitute, it was just so like ridiculous and like definitely worst mom award ever, because
by far
she did not give a fuck about her kids. Like, first of all, she expected her daughter to die in order to save the brother, right, their son. And then when the son died, she was like, I'm gonna fucking be the Empress Dowager.
It's like, oh, my favorite character in all of costume drama.
Yeah. And and I'm gonna immediately accept this substitute. As like there was no love there at all. Your fucking son died. And she wasn't crying because the son died. She cried because it was like a monkey wrench in her plans to become Empress Dowager.
I didn't understand why she needed to be in the show after her arrest.
Yeah.
Like, for me, her purpose in the show, like, was this antagonist character, the head of this other family, the threat to the crown prince, all of these things. I understood her. Even though I didn't like her character, I understood why she was in the show. But when she gets taken down, the king even says to her, like, hey, not only do I not care if you're guilty, it's you that put yourself into this position. I'm pissed that you're making me put you in jail. You make me look like a dick, but now I have to because I have to satisfy, I run a country. I can't just pardon you. So just you being a dumbass makes me do this. And I was like, okay, yeah, I understand now why this is all coming together. And she goes to jail. She should have never had another scene after that. Because the fact that appearances, we have to I have to arrest you, I have no choice. But then not even 2 episodes later, an episode later, she's out freely mourning her son and then just back to scheming.
Yeah, and literally like controlling all the guards and stuff. And it's just that made no sense because the guard should know, like, oh, she's a prisoner. Like, why are they like taking orders from a prisoner? That makes no sense. But also, I really did not want to fucking see her acting again with how, like, just the overacting and how she, like, pulls her face and bugs her eyes and, like, like, not even clenches her jaw. Like, she does this weird jaw thing that, like, I can't stand. And I'm just like, I really don't want to watch this actress anymore.
She reminded me of a pissed off chihuahua. She just kind of shook a lot and had buggy eyes.
Yeah, so I was so not for that.
But there's a moment where she tells the guards, like, to apprehend someone. She's like, apprehend them, take them outside and behead them. It was the doctors.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, you're in jail. You don't get to, like, wait a minute, what? You were just disgraced and imprisoned, and now you get to execute the doctors? Like, why is anyone listening to you? I don't know. Worst character in the show.
Worst character, but I really, really fucking hated Pei Wen-shen's little, like, sidekick guy.
Okay.
Like, like, in all of in the history of, like, these sidekick characters in these ancient dramas, there's always one, right? Like, the male lead always has one or two, like, either they're guards or, like, bodyguards or, servants, whatever it is, right? He is literally, like, the most, like, loud and obnoxious and, like, just doesn't fucking get the point. Like, usually those characters are the ones that, like, always understands your lead the most, right? And they just know what to do and they know when to leave the room. And then I know they're trying to do, like, comedic, relief with his character, but he's so fucking annoying.
Yeah, I know how much you hated him. I didn't want him beheaded.
I didn't want him to die or anything. I was just like, can you make him smarter? Because it was driving, and it was so ridiculous because, like, supposedly Pei Wen-shen and Li Rong were, like, the smartest of all smarts, right? And then, like, Li Rong's, like, all, like, maids and all the other people, like, they just know their shit and they know, like, what to say, when to say it, they know how to read the room. And then there's Pei Wen-shen's guy, and he's just literally the most, like, oblivious, obnoxious person. And I'm like, I can't handle this.
So a lot of annoying characters in this one.
Yeah. And also, we want to talk about how, especially I mean, this happens in all of the Chinese dramas where how they end an episode. It's just so weird because, like, most of the time, you want to end an episode on kind of a cliffhanger. So you're drawn in, so you're really excited to watch the next episode.
Well, at the very least, you want the end of the episode to feel like the end of an episode.
Yeah.
Like, you want something to feel final. You want something to feel like a period on the sentence of this episode. Even if it's not the best cliffhanger in the world, you're leaving us with something that says, this is an ending. You don't just end a chapter in the middle of like, hey, did you want some tea? End chapter 25. Well, but why though? Why did it end that way?
But there were like literally times, and I'm telling you, like there has been scenes where you could tell the director filmed it that this is meant to be the end of an episode. And it like pushes in on the face, and it was like almost like a dun 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 moment, and you're like, okay, this is where the episode should end, right here. And then it goes on for 2 more scenes where people are just having, a little garden party, or they're just having a little conversation. And then it ends so like weirdly. And I'm just like,
I guess I'll go off and go to bed now. End of episode. What?
no, it's not even that. Like, at least it's like, oh, end of episode because they're going to bed. It's like the end of the day. Sure. But it was like, let's take a little stroll at the park and then end of episode. And we're like, why?
Well, it's funny for how many conversations I've had on set with actors where we'll be shooting a scene and the scene will, finish, but it's like the end of an act or it's the end of an episode. And I would have to go on set and you just walk up to the actor and go, hey, can you read that line like it's the end of the episode? And they go, oh, right. This is the end of the episode, or this is the end of the act. Actors know that a line reading to send you out of an episode is different than sending you out of a scene, or just a line that happens in the middle of the scene. The joke on set sometimes, like, oh, you want me to say it like the trailer guy, everyone in New York is going to die, like it's just but it needs some freaking gravity to get us out of the actor, out of the episode. And you're right, there were so many times where the actors were delivering that line and the camera would push in and it's like the world has come to a stop. Cut to 2 guys walking along, shooting the shit, nothing happening here. He's like, why are we still going?
But that's the whole thing, is like, because everything is shot, right? And it's like they don't, like in American television, it's like you shoot it episode by episode. So each episode has a beginning, middle, and end as well.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you have your act, well, you have your teaser, and then your act 1 and your act 2 and your act 3, and like it's just kind of like it has structure. Whereas like a lot of the Chinese ones, they just film and film and film, and then the editor goes and chops it all up, and it's just like without like real meaning as to like why an episode ends. It's just like, oh, it's making the time. It's like it's so many minutes, and then okay, done.
But they have to also. I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's the case. I believe that scripts are written, and scripts have beginning, middle, and ends. And the director knows that this is the end of the episode. The director does that push-in shot. That the actors know. And then when they get into post, they look at the time and go, oh, actually, let's just move this 2 minutes down the road. Because maybe they cut scenes. Maybe they made an episode too short because they cut scenes out of it that weren't good or didn't work or whatever. Well, now our episode is too short. In American TV, you still have to make that episode work. You don't get to, normally, every once in a while you can do it, but normally you don't get to move the end of the episode into the next episode or pull it up because it's directed by 2 different directors. You're not allowed to put one director's scene into another director's episode. So if we delete scenes and all of a sudden an episode is 30 minutes instead of 42, we got to go shoot some more. We got to go put scenes back in. Whereas this, I think they just look at it and go, let's just move that scene to this one, and then we'll be at time. And so I do believe they still have scripts. They think they know where they're going to end the episode, but there's a producer and an editor somewhere that don't give a shit, and they're just pressing buttons.
Yeah. Anyway, so those are my gripes. And so my rating, I believe, I wanted to rate it a little bit higher, but I just, there's so like it's just the last 7 episodes really just ruin it. And albeit it has happy endings with like the 3 couples, I'm really glad for that. It's just like, it's just got real dumb. So my rating is stepping out to get fresh air. I wanted to say, like onboard karaoke, but I needed to really step out and get some fresh air with this one.
I think my rating is exactly the same, stepping out to get fresh air. I think it's on the low side of that ranking. Like, it's almost down to land sickness, but there was enough redeeming qualities and character work and stuff they did right that it deserves a little higher than kind of being one of our bottom of the barrel dramas. But it really did feel like you could kind of zone out for a lot of this one, especially in the last 7 to 10 episodes. It just stopped kind of making any sense.
I do have to say the reason why mine is on the higher end is because your 2 leads, I mean, I feel like their performances really saved the show.
Yeah, I thought they were both very good, and I thought he was much better in this than he was in, was it Journey to You? I thought he was just kind of like weird and grumpy and kind of a wiener in that. And this one, I thought he commanded a lot more, and he was given a lot more to do. And I just felt like he was much better in motion. It felt like there was so much standing still in Journey to You, where he was just kind of standing still and looking.
Yeah.
And it was very just drawn out, and I just didn't think that it suited him. And this felt like it moved, and it was much better.
Yeah. So our rec this week, I'm not really even sure if I can recommend it, because it is an audio drama that I listened on an app called Shimalaya, but it is in Mandarin. So it's an app where there's like a bunch of content, like it goes from like, podcasts and like users actually posting, their own things. Some people will actually like post them reading a novel out, and there's audiobooks, but there's also like some really like produced audio dramas on there. And so this one that I am recommending, because it's very similar in terms of like the rebirth thing, and it's called After Being Forced to Marry the Villain Regent. And it's basically about these 2 men, it's a BL, and they went through a life, and they were like, one family was like framed, and he died, he like committed suicide by poison, and the other he was forced to marry this guy, and then it became where he like ruined the family, and then got everyone killed. And so it was they both rebirthed in and had a second chance, and then things change, and rather than the one guy marrying the other guy, the other lead's cousin, they end up marrying each other because they're both trying to change what happened in the past. So, I mean, it pertains to the Princess Royal. That's why I wanted to recommend it, but also it's in Mandarin. I haven't found any kind of English translation online for it. That is it for us this week, and thanks for listening.
See you next time.